there was a big event that occurred in October of '63 over in the Soviet Union back then, which was one of those, they thought it was us coming up over the poles. And of course, there was a lot of concern again. We're only talking about a year after the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Isn't it a silly debate, that polar debate, whether or not there's a threat narrative behind the whole alien issue or whether they're benevolent? I know Dr. Stephen Greer, for example, gets very frustrated with the idea that we sometimes talk about a threat, that Lou Elizondo talks about the possibility of a threat being posed. But in and of itself, you're a military man by training. Isn't something we don't understand a threat?
Absolutely.
Everybody wants to hear from somebody that was there, but it's hard, man. It's hard to get people that were there to talk, especially if they're current, even though they're not talking for the Navy and they're talking for themselves. But I bet we're feeling lucky today, right?
I've been on the west coast of San Diego since 2002 is when I joined the Navy. To my surprise, which is something I've never witnessed, was a light I noticed on the horizon, but it looked as if it were surfacing out of the water and going up. They all executed at the same time, leaving.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Time to fire up your systems. Make sure to check out the links down in your breadbasket. Like, subscribe, share, do all the things. Go do them right now. Come find me at x.com/shotonmine. The sDm Files, episode 12. Here we go.
That Hunt was going to leave the country, may not be coming back, and this might be the last time that Caddy gets to see him. So we thought, you know what? I'm going to hit him with the question I've always been interested in, is ask him why they did in JFK. I think that was sort of the way it was put, not who did it or what. It was already a foregone conclusion. Why did they do it? And it was the answer that was a surprise at a JFK conference. And the answer is that JFK was going to disclose the biggest secret that they have, or something to those words, to the effect he was going to disclose the alien presence. Now, that was a big response, because JFK and UFOs don't mix. And
Richard Dolan, Intelligent Disclosure. Talking about JFK. Talking about JFK with this other guy, Phillip Lavelle. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch his 7-part series, his 7-part interview with Phillip about JFK. Phillip Lavelle's a JFK expert. There's a lot of them. Anyways, their angle here is that the Phillip guys kind of mainly, they talk about a lot of JFK, and they talk about a lot of UFO JFK stuff. But they're kind of telling it as a story of, well, there's so many reasons that JFK experts have been able to find that all the people involved with killing JFK killed him. So the UFO thing seems absurd. And so then that's what they're taking on, right? They're like, well, maybe it's not that absurd, actually. And it is all the things that they then go over, kind of combine, that they think, leads the inner workings of the military-industrial complex to take out the president. And so at some point, he's talking about a couple characters who are involved in the CIA and the JFK stuff that he knows. And they, are talking to each other and decide that, in the end, the straw that broke the camel's back ended up being that the powers that be thought that because of all of his other activities, not just the sex, which was part of it, I guess, or they say it was part of it. He's just having sex with different women and doing drugs with them, and so he was compromised in the opinion of the conspiracy. And at some point they came to understand, to believe that he was going to disclose the UFOs and aliens. And that was like the final straw. So he had to be stopped. He had to be stopped like immediately. And so I guess kind of, they go over a couple different things, a few really particular documents that they want to say, look, this is proof. It kind of hinges on the actual act of them like pulling the trigger because it's UFOs and aliens is a particular meeting that JFK had with Alan Dulles before, like 10 days before he was killed. And so they're kind of saying that meeting was, JFK telling Dulles that the final red lines have been crossed. That he was going to take out the CIA, or he was going to take out the UFOs while taking out the CIA. And so, they take their time. I guess they didn't take their time, actually. This is kind of a short one, 49 minutes. So they don't get too much into the JFK stuff. They just kind of focusing on the UFOs and aliens parts. So they have to tell you about the chicks he was sleeping with and the drugs he was doing, so the memos would be in context. Because basically he wasn't in charge of the people who killed him, and maybe thought he was, and that's why they had to kill him. So yeah, it's an episode about JFK being murdered by the American government, or at least, parts of the American government, or the bureaucracy, or the military-industrial complex. But their main thing is that it has to do with UFOs and aliens. A lot of times, Richard Dolan will discuss with you and explain that he thinks the conspiracy is deeply, the UFOs and aliens conspiracy is deeply involved with most of the other big conspiracies, like the JFK assassination. And that makes the UFOs and aliens conspiracy really like the keystone conspiracy, because like he says at the beginning of this video, when they poll people in America about the Warren Commission and who they think killed JFK, that Americans, the majority of Americans don't think that the government killed JFK. But when they poll anyone else, all the foreigners, or just little groups of foreigners, well, they're all convinced that the CIA killed JFK by a huge margin. And the official position of the United States government, all of its different official places to take positions, is that the guy who shot JFK was basically nobody, not involved with anybody else, and it was a tragedy. And so because they won't even basically admit that, like, yeah, as with all these other murders that kind of everyone knows about at this point, the people in the CIA and the FBI and etc., you know, been doing some fucking terrible shit at times, or all the time maybe. Right? Like, so this isn't news, really. But so he says, well, the American government can't really even admit to little pieces of the JFK stuff, which is so old and shouldn't matter. But they can't. There's no way that they're so deeply involved in the UFO and aliens conspiracy that that would never even come close to happening. So that's why the JFK assassination and conspiracy and cover-up has been so important to Richard Dolan and ufology. And then, yeah, recently, over the last 25 years in the document dumps, there's been a lot of stuff in there about UFOs and aliens. So it's a fun watch. It's 49 minutes. You can then go watch the other 14 hours. Without going to his website or joining his website or anything.
For me, what Dean brought to the table was a humanity, a piece of the connection that was missing from all of this. What was happening at the ground level for the people that are noticing and interacting with this phenomenon when it occurs. And he told me that we were going to tell a different story, that we were going to talk about what we derived from that interaction. What could we say about whatever this phenomena is, whether it's alien or some other strange thing that we don't understand. And from what I've seen from the work that he's done, he really started to capture that. And I want to see more from him. And I want to see more people talking about what happened at the ground level. And then corroborating that information with the data we have gives us a much better picture of what people have experienced and what we may be dealing with. That it doesn't seem like, frankly, the government is going to share that information with us right now.
NewsNation, Ross Coulthart, reality check with Sean Cahill here on the right. I'll put this other guy's name, Dean Alioto, on the left. Sean Cahill's pretty cool dude. Usually, I don't give him enough credit. I'll say something like he's the guy that they brought him on the show with Lou Elizondo. Like you'll see, I think the third interview on Theories of Everything with Kurt Jamungle. And I would say that he's put there to make Elizondo tolerable. Because, if you remember, if you go watch any of those older interviews now, Lou Elizondo is not fun to listen to or watch or hang out with. And people constantly say that he is, but you just watch the interview and it's like, ugh. But when Sean's on, it's better. And also, Sean isn't just like he's not just an Elizondo guy. He is with one of my other faves, Timothy Alberino. I think he went with Timothy Alberino as like his military weapons expert guy to Peru for the face peelers, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And he was teaching, he'll give a description about how the jungle people there had these kind of like muskets that they were using when he showed up, and then he taught them how to use modern weapons and radios, and taught them like small unit tactics, stuff like that. So he's fun to listen to. This is a great NewsNation reality check Ross Coulthart episode, and I'm kind of surprised that it's only an hour. So I guess what's primarily going on here is these two fellas have made a new movie, basically, The Alien Perspective. And the basics behind the Alien Perspective is that they have kind of recreated the Tic-Tac incident from, I think, 2004. And Sean Cahill was on the bridge, on the deck and on the bridge. I can't remember his exact rank and stuff. They might put it here in the breakdown. Okay. Former Chief Master at Arms. And I think they say he was on the USS Princeton. But anyways, so he's, firsthand witness of the Tic-Tac encounters. And he's been recruited by Dean here to help him make a movie, The Alien Perspective, which is about that encounter, basically, or those encounters. But it's from the alien perspective. So I guess the whole movie is from the inside of the Tic-Tac.
Was unlike anything I'd ever seen before.
Everything started out normally. He seemed upset and started pointing toward Rendlesham Forest.
We just looked at each other for a minute and looked back up at the sky.
There was no sound at all.
Multiple witnesses, military personnel.
My emotions were all over the place. Scared to in awe.
Most science documentaries look at an encounter with extraterrestrial civilization from our point of view. But let's turn it upside down.
Simply the hypothesis that we live in a computer simulation.
The question comes up, who created the simulation?
It was observing us. It was communicating. My questions are, where'd it come from?
Could they maybe be us in the future?
We cannot assume that they're just 100 years more advanced than us.
If aliens are intelligent, they're also curious.
Here we are, we come in peace.
The front page of the New York Times was a big deal.
I don't know whether there are other countries that would like to get their hands on this.
What are the next steps that NASA is going to do? What are the next steps that the community is going to do?
This is stuff that belongs to humanity.
That's what I was expecting. I didn't really realize from listening to the interview, watching the interview here, that it was all that other stuff. It seemed like I thought they were making kind of like a drama, but that looks cool. It's not out yet, but it must be coming out soon. That's what's going on here. That's why these guys are doing this interview probably. But this interview turns into a lot more than just talking about the Tic-Tac encounters that are in this guy's movie or show. So they're both experiencers. They've both been experiencing UFOs and aliens their whole life. And so they get into kind of all the facets of the alien experience. They've been seeing UFOs a lot. This guy, Sean, thinks that maybe he was abducted a little bit. It's kind of hard to tell because he's got this missing time thing going on. So this is a very fun interview. There's a little darkness in there where it's like Ross wants to try and convince us all that we should be kind of happy not knowing the truth, because all the people that he's talked to have convinced him that what they know about the truth of the phenomenon is that it's really fucking bad. It's so bad. It's so bad that we should probably just keep things the way they are. Nobody really needs to know what's actually going on. Kind of describes it as, well, they're mostly indifferent to us, but then goes on to, say it's so bad, just so bad. Like, and I don't know what that means. They also get into the parts of ufology where in the the inner layers of the conspiracy, which is the inside, inner layers of the Western governments, American government, the Five Eyes, right? But the West, the inside parts of their governments have people in there who are convinced that the UFOs are real and the aliens are real, but they are demons. They're the bad, evil, Satan stuff come to fuck us up. They got a fun thing going on. Ross gets through this whole interview without saying fuck them once.
You learn over, the years to differentiate what's what on your radar. So that night, I noticed that I couldn't differentiate what was what at all amongst the things that I just mentioned. So I decided to go out into the bridge wing just to take a look, to see. I didn't think it was that far away. I think, it's nighttime, so light travels. So I figured, let me just poke outside, see what I can see. And to my surprise, which is something I've never witnessed, was a light I noticed on the horizon, but it looked as if it were surfacing out of the water and going up. Now, seeing lights on the horizon, very typical when you're out in the water, but seeing a light on the horizon going into the air is a different story. So witnessing that, I'm not sure of what I'm seeing. What goes through my head, maybe there's
Weaponized. Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp. First-hand military witness goes public. 4 Tic-Tac UAPs. Weaponized, episode number 73. This is like a follow-up to the release of the Tic-Tac, the new Tic-Tac video last week. So, they say, Twitter was saying that this must be the guy who put the video out there, who leaked the video. But that would seem super unlikely since he is still in the Navy and makes a big deal about saying, I'm still in the Navy, I really plan on staying in the Navy. That seems to be something that the Navy probably be able to figure out if he did leak that video and he wasn't supposed to. So, it seems unlikely that he's like the leaker. It's also kind of incredible that he's in the Navy doing the job that he said he was doing when this encounter happened, basically. And he's able to just tell us all this. Like, it's not classified or anything. He reminds me of like Commander Fravor. Professional, just kind of telling you what he saw. Nothing about what he says sounds crazy. And so he tells a story that he, is looking at his radar. He's a radar guy. I don't remember what ship he says he's on. USS Jackson. So, he's a radar guy. He's looking at his radar. He's been a radar guy for a long time. And he's also a pilot. And he can't tell what the fuck's going on his radar. He sees things happening. And so he goes outside, goes on deck to look for himself. And he sees what he thinks is something flying out of the water. Which turns out to be 4 things flying out of the water. After he sees that, he goes back inside and doing his radar stuff. And he sees more stuff. He can't really figure out what it is. And I think he says at first, when he goes back inside, and he's looking at the radar, and he kind of starts to make a little bit of sense of what he's seeing because he went out and looked. That he could see like two things at first, and then as this encounter unfolds and they look at it afterwards, they figure out that there was 4. And so that's as the encounter unfolds, and he's, you know, I can't remember what they called it, but he's in the, you know, the radar room. And so they're looking at 2 objects at first, and they zoom out, and then they can see 4. And it seems like he says, it seems like, you know, the things saw him checking them out and decided to leave. And so they all left all at the same time. And he, you know, describes it as what he would recognize and see often in the Navy as a, you know, coordinated exit. So it's a fun story. I'm sure it's not long, 49 minutes. Classic Weaponized. We got a first-hand witness. This kind of goes with the video from last week. It's a fun story. I think that's the only kind of like story that he tells, but kind of a fun part of his story is after they had witnessed this, and by they, he's not the only person. The whole ship sees this, the whole bridge, and there's a whole team of radar people, and there's a whole team of bridge people that are right next to each other, all seeing the same stuff. And so after that, then they are talking about it, and he kind of gets into like a argument with one of the bridge guys, who says, well, you know, when we zoomed in on it, we didn't see it was a jet, but we did, and it was really far away, but we didn't see its stuff, heat signature, wings, tail, nose, etc., because of how far away it was and how we were zoomed in. And so he's like, oh yeah, and he went and found a jet that they knew was a jet that was even farther away, and they zoomed in on it, and they could see all that stuff, and he was like, what now? So like, that was a fun part of his story, and a fun way of telling his story is that, you know, that they talked about it afterwards, the Navy dudes, and kind of argued a little bit, and then he had to slap the other dude down with zooming in on an airplane. And I think even last time, but a lot of times on Twitter, on X, I'll say, why don't they put this next to an example of a fucking jet? You know, why do we gotta go watch Mick West do that? And that reminds me, I think Marique shows up in here, right? He's everywhere this week. There he is. So I'm kind of surprised he wasn't on the last 2 videos, because he's on everyone's videos. He is on everyone's X. He's zinging in all directions. I think mostly because he is zinging in all directions, but he's like pretty deeply involved with Skywatcher right now too. And so I don't know what's going on with Marique. I don't know if he's a Corbell clan guy, honestly, or if he's just his own thing. He's like been wading into ufology. He's really, you know, when you see him on everybody's stuff talking, he's a much different character than X. And so if you know in ufology, he's like one of the debunkers. He gets on with anyone, anywhere, anytime, basically, and just argues it out with the debunkers. So here he is talking to Jeremy about how these videos, you know, Corbell, which I think is actually a good move. I pointed out in the past because it's been like fun. You know, they kind of try and get ahead of the debunkers, and that's what this 10 minutes is in here. So I guess this is Marique getting to tell his side, but on Corbell's show instead of on all the different places on Twitter, on X. And this is him explaining how jets work and then you can see what you can see when you see a jet. And even then, with all of Marique's hand motions, which if you go look at him on X, he's doing way more than hand waving. But basically saying that that's not what a jet looks like. This Tic-Tac video, and there's a bunch of others now. This is just the most recent. It's not what jets look like. Whatever that thing is flying around, it's not a jet. That's not what jets look like. No matter how you photograph them, whatever angles. And this is not just regular way of photographing a jet. This is FLIR video. So the lack of heat signatures is a big deal when you're talking about calling that thing a jet. So it's a good one. It's a fun one. You know, I guess it took me until a few minutes ago to realize that Marique was on here again. But he's everywhere this week. He was in like every UFO video I watched except for Ross Coulthart. Unless he was there too and I just didn't notice him.